My name is Ritika Patni, and I'm the founder of the Art of Health in Singapore. Also a member of the core group steering the Ayurveda celebrations globally, anchored by India Foundation's Center for Public Diplomacy and Soft Power. Today, we bring to you the series of World Ayurveda Podcasts, where we will be interacting with global ambassadors, doctors, students, researchers, and other Ayurveda enthusiasts from around the world who are doing some pioneering work and hear how their work in the field of Ayurveda will change how we live our lives in this coming decade. I'm very excited. Today, I have with me somebody who himself is a pioneer of Ayurveda, particularly in the West, Dr. Marc Halpern. Dr. Marc is the founder and the president of the California College of Ayurveda. He's particularly been a pillar in the development of the profession in the United States as co-founder of the National Ayurvedic Medical Association, also popularly known as NAMA, for which he also served as chairman of the National Committee on Ayurvedic Education. Besides this, Dr. Marc has several distinctions to his credit, including being invited as speaker for some conferences around the world, including the keynote speech at Harvard University's conference on integrative medicine and cancer. Dr. Marc has dedicated himself to the development of Ayurveda as a profession for over 20 years, written several Ayurvedic textbooks, published in several prestigious journals, and today he sits on the board of several important organizations on Ayurveda, yoga, and research internationally. Namaste, Dr. Marc. It's wonderful to have you with us today.
Namaste, Ritika. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing to promote Ayurveda all around the world.
Thank you. Dr. Marc, we'll begin by just asking you about your initial journey. So you grew up in the United States. How did you discover Ayurveda, and then what really inspired you to study it?
You know, Ritika, the greatest inspiration for me to study Ayurvedic medicine came from the realization that it was important to make the world a better place. I observed all around me that people were suffering and that people were unhappy. And I came to realize that the work that I wanted to do in the world was to make people happier and healthier. And that really very much guided my journey. And it guided me initially to study chiropractic medicine. Following the study of chiropractic medicine, I began to engage deeper into other forms of holistic medicine. And I did a postgraduate certification in holistic medicine. And this introduced me to homeopathy, to herbalism, to Chinese medicine, and also to Ayurvedic medicine. And when I began to study Ayurvedic medicine as part of this program, it was as though everything that I'd ever known had come back to me. It gave language to what I already knew in my heart. I felt as though I wasn't really learning Ayurveda. I felt that I was remembering Ayurveda. And I knew that I would be dedicating the rest of my life to this science, although I didn't know exactly what that would entail. When I completed this program in holistic medicine, I wanted to continue my studies in Ayurveda, and so I began to seek out other teachers of Ayurvedic medicine. And the teacher that I was most drawn to was Dr. David Frawley of Vamadeva Shastra. And I became very close with Vamadeva and began to read everything that he had written. This was back in the very early 1990s, so it was a long time ago. And I began to study with him personally as much as he could guide me. And then I wanted to go further into my clinical studies. And so he introduced me to Dr. Subhash Ranade from Pune. And I began to sponsor Dr. Ranade to come over from India to stay at my home here in California. And he would bring me the classical textbooks. And I would study from the classical textbooks, both with him, but also in between his visits. And when he would come, and he would probably laugh at this, I would ask him 1,000 questions, and I'd record every session that we had together. When he would leave, I would break down those recordings. I would play them again and again, breaking them down, deciphering the information, working through the classical textbooks at the same time. I already had a medical background and a clinical practice background. So I developed a clinical practice doing Ayurvedic medicine and incorporating the knowledge that Dr. Frawley and Dr. Ronaday had so graciously shared with me, and began to put together clinical protocols for the study of Ayurvedic medicine. I mean, for the practice of Ayurvedic medicine. Well, one day, Dr. Frawley came to visit me at my home here in California. And I was very excited because my teacher was coming to visit. I wanted to show him my clinical files, the work that I was doing. And I thought perhaps one day I could do some advanced classes for his students. He took a look at the clinical work I was doing and the files, and he was very impressed. And I remember we were talking with each other, and I was lamenting, why is there no profession for Ayurvedic medicine here in the United States? This was about 1994, 1993, I think 94. And it saddened me and it surprised me, because Ayurvedic medicine was such an extraordinary system of medicine in my mind, in my heart, the most complete of indigenous medical science that I had ever come across. The most complete medical science that understood the human being physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And so realizing this, I couldn't understand. I was shocked that you couldn't really study the totality of Ayurvedic medicine anywhere. And we all shared this, Dr. Frawley, Dr. Ronaday, myself. By that time, I had already met Dr. Avinash Lele as well. And he would come over, and several other teachers. One day I was sitting in meditation, and I had a vision. And in that vision, it was both auditory and visual. And the visual aspect of the vision was two hands together like this with a lotus flower. And it was coming toward me like this. And the visual aspect of that, I mean, the auditory aspect of that was really sharing with me my dharma, the work that I was to do to build the profession for Ayurvedic medicine here in the United States. And so when I came out of that meditation and out of that vision, I shared that with my teachers. And Dr. Frawley said to me, well, why don't you write a curriculum, see what that would look like? And I went into seclusion for a week at a spiritual retreat center, an ashram here near here in California, called the Ananda Ashram, and sat in what's known as Master's Gardens overlooking the mountains. And for a week, I did nothing but eat khichdi and study the classical texts, brought with me everything that Dr. Frawley had ever written, and also everything that Bhagawan Das had ever written at that point. And began to piece together from all of their writings a curriculum that I thought could be taught here in the West in order to train people to be able to practice Ayurvedic medicine. And this was again in 1994. And it was out of that I was able to develop the organization to be able to teach Ayurvedic medicine, and that we started the California College of Ayurveda for the purpose of being able to train the first practitioners here in the United States. Then our first group of graduates, along with myself, we formed the California Association of Ayurvedic Medicine to begin to build the legal landscape for Ayurveda here in California. And then myself and 3 other individuals in the country, one of whom was my student, and 2 others who were very involved in Ayurveda here in the United States. We put together the National Ayurvedic Medical Association. That was about 1998. And so we began to build the infrastructure. Most recently, I've been involved in organizing the National Association of Ayurvedic Schools and Colleges, which is seeking to bring together all the different programs that are here in the United States. And it's an association for the various schools so that they can share with each other and also improve and enhance the education that they're providing to their students. In 2015, the California College of Ayurveda became the first school in the United States to be state approved to offer a Doctor of Ayurveda program. And so we're very excited about that. And we've been, since graduating, Ayurvedic doctors every year for the last couple of years now. So it's been a wonderful journey. We just celebrated our 25th anniversary of the origins of the college. And it's been very exciting to watch Ayurveda grow here in the United States, and not just the schools, but to really see how it is transforming the consciousness of the general population as people begin to think differently, and they begin to think in terms of living in harmony with nature and realizing that the source of their health is going to be based on the harmony that they can create. So it's been a very, very fascinating journey.
That is indeed very fascinating, from student to teacher of Ayurveda, and now, a pioneer in the field. Dr. Mark, so your association with Ayurveda now has been so long, particularly in the West, in the United States. Can you share how you think the perception and adoption of Ayurveda has changed from when you started to today?
I think one of the best examples that I can give you of how awareness of Ayurveda has grown is that when I first began to share the knowledge of Ayurveda with the general public, it was really very new and very few people had heard of it. In fact, when the school first started, in order to attract students, I began to travel around and visit yoga center after yoga center, many, many modern, just yoga studios, and a few ashrams. And I would give introductory programs on Ayurvedic medicine and tell people about the college, and a few people would show up. And I remember one time I was visiting an ashram, and I had the opportunity to speak in front of a large group of students. This was at the Shivananda Yoga Vedanta Center, their retreat center in the Bahamas. I had been invited out there to give some lectures, and there was probably close to 300 people, maybe 200 people that were at that particular program on that day. And I asked, how many of you have heard of Ayurveda out of the two? And these are yogis, so you know that yogis would be far more aware of Ayurveda than the general public. And out of 200 people, maybe 10% raised their hand that they had heard of Ayurveda. And then I said, now how many of you know what your constitution is? And there was maybe 2 or 3 hands that went up just a little bit because they weren't even sure. Now I go around and I teach about Ayurvedic medicine. I still teach all over the world, and I've been to Japan and South America and to India as well, and Canada, United States, and back to the Bahamas. And when I go back to the Bahamas, I'm always fond of asking that same question now to the group. And now it's about 300 students that are there when I'm speaking. So how many of you have heard of Ayurveda? And now every single student in the group raises their hand. And I think that says a lot about the change in awareness. And then I say, how many of you know what your constitution is? And about 2/3 of the students raise their hand and say, yeah, I know what my constitution is. I've had an evaluation. I think that's extraordinary. I think it really reflects the growth. And that's particular within the American yoga community. And of course, the American yoga community is huge. And so within that community, there is tremendous awareness of Ayurveda. Then you get into the communities outside of the yoga world. And when you get into the communities outside of the world of yoga, awareness is a lot lower. Now, here in our community, where the California College of Ayurveda is, we live in a rural community. We live in a mountain community. Our entire county, which is a large area, has only 100,000 people. Our small city of Nevada City, where we're located, has only about 3,000 people. And the nearby city right next to us has 15. Gives you an idea of just how small this rural community is. So, we every day, we have the opportunity to touch maybe 30, 40,000 people's lives in our community. So because we've been here for so long, if you ask anybody in our community, have you heard of Ayurveda? No matter whether they've had any exposure to yoga at all, 80 or 90% of them are going to raise their hand and say, yeah, I've heard of Ayurveda, because, you know, Ayurveda is here in the community. Students fly from all over the world. Patients come from all over the world to our clinic. And so our community, our college has a big impact in a small community like this. But you leave the small communities, and we live in California, and California is a very aware place. But even in California, when you get into the places where there's no Ayurvedic colleges, which is most places, and if it's not the yoga community, it's still a very small number of people in the broader population that really have heard of Ayurveda, or even smaller, how many of them know their own constitutions. Of course, myself and other people have written books for the public, and whether it was Deepak Chopra or David Frawley or myself, many people have read books and they've heard about Ayurveda. There are more and more movie stars that have mentioned the word on television, and that always brings a lot of attention. So I think it's growing rapidly, but it's still, there's so much work to do to bring Ayurveda to the forefront. Now, I should make one more comment, and that is about the medical community. What about the medical community? Do they know what Ayurveda is? Well, if you ask them, have you heard of Ayurveda? I think probably half the medical doctors now in California would say, yes, I've heard of Ayurvedic medicine, which I think is extraordinary. I've done a lot of work. Our school has done a lot of work with the medical school at UC Davis, been there many times, visited as a visiting professor, many schools. So I think that half of them would say, yes, I've heard of Ayurveda, but how many of them know their constitution? Very, very few, very, very few. So that's the state of Ayurveda here in the United States today. I think that awareness is growing. I think we have a lot of work still to do. It's really, you know, although it's an ancient science, it's still new here, and it's going to be new here for a while.
Wonderful, Dr. Mark. Taking off from that last point you were making, you know, about your beginnings with the yoga community and introducing them to Ayurveda. What do you, you know, as also a certified yoga instructor and now an Ayurveda teacher, what would you say is the relationship between these two sciences?
I don't personally, I don't think you could separate the two sciences. I would say that Ayurveda is the healing side of yoga, and yoga is the spiritual tradition behind Ayurveda. I think that to really understand Ayurveda to its fullest, you have to study Samkhya yoga, and you have to study to some degree as well the rest of the Shaddarshana, because the more you understand of India's philosophy and the more you understand of India's mythology and mythological stories, the deeper you can go into the meaning of the various shlokas found in the classical texts. As you come upon certain words as a Westerner, as I come and others come upon certain words, to really understand the derivation of those words as well from Sanskrit is also very important. So I think that yoga and Ayurveda are intimately connected, bound together by Samkhya philosophy, touched upon by other philosophies as well that influence Ayurveda. And I personally don't think they can be separated. And I think that if all you have to do is look at the Hatha Yoga Pradipaka, and if you read the Hatha Yoga Pradipaka, which is a wonderful text on yoga, the language of the benefits of yoga are articulated utilizing the language of Ayurveda and the three doshas. And so when I think about even what is being called today yoga therapy, I think that it all has its origins within Ayurveda.
We'll move towards a more personal topic, Dr. Mark. You've written this wonderful book called Healing Your Life, where you've described your personal journey of healing through Ayurveda. And in today's world, there are lots of people suffering from challenging health conditions. They may be open to alternative systems of medicine, But one of the challenges of the world today also is that there is an overwhelming amount of information which is available. That can be, confusing sometimes. So what would you advise to them? Where should they really start?
I think when somebody's really interested in learning Ayurvedic medicine, they have two choices. This is for their own health and their well-being. They have two choices. They can either read any of a number of popular introductory books. My book, Healing Your Life, Lessons on the Path of Ayurveda, shares my story, and it also takes the reader through the journey of healing themselves. And so my journey becomes just a small part of the book. Most of the book is about their journey to heal themselves and to integrate Ayurveda into their own lives. I think books are wonderful. I think they can guide you. I think they can inspire you. I think that when you are very serious on the journey, I think you want to get a consultation. I think you want to find a practitioner that you can work with that's going to answer your more difficult questions. It's not always easy to determine what the prakriti of an individual is based on questionnaires, so that when you're seeing a person in face-to-face, when you go through a complete consultation and a complete evaluation, a good Ayurvedic doctor can put together a complete treatment plan in order to support you to walk your path back to health, and then support you to actually implement it into your life. Ayurveda is more than intellectual knowledge, it's practical knowledge, and you can be the most knowledgeable person about Ayurveda. You can know 1,000 things you should do, but it's more important to do one of them than to know 1,000 that you should do. It's more important to live one small part of Ayurvedic medicine than it is to memorize all the shlokas in the Charaka Samhita. So a good Ayurvedic practitioner is not only going to be knowledgeable, but is going to be able to counsel you and support you to implement Ayurveda into your own life. And so I think seeing a good practitioner is really, really valuable. Now, many times here in the United States, we don't have a local practitioner in many parts of the country. And so because of that, I think that today's technology and the video consultations that can be done are wonderful, especially now during the COVID-19 era. Our clinic has made many adjustments. And so not only is our college clinic taking care of the local community, but we're also taking care of the global community. And so we have people contacting the college all the time. We have a team of practitioners here at the college that are doing video consultations with people all around our country and other parts of the world as well, where they're not able to find a really good guide, a really good doctor and coach to help them to implement Ayurveda into their life. So that's how I think it would be a really a good way to move forward from a personal perspective. I think it's important. Read a good book and see a good practitioner.
Okay. Dr. Mark, we're of course living in the times of the COVID-19 crisis, and sustainability is one of the most important themes which has emerged out of this time. So can you share your views on how you think Ayurveda embodies the principles of sustainable and natural living?
Sustainability is so important, and it's not talked about enough. I'm so happy that you brought it up, but even though it's a word that people say and speak, to try to live in a sustainable way is very, very difficult. For nearly 8 billion people on our planet to live in a manner that will be able to be sustainable is quite a challenge. I think that Ayurvedic medicine, more than any other system that I've come upon, holds very important knowledge that can support us to live sustainably. I think first and foremost is just philosophically the principle that if we're not living harmoniously, we're going to suffer from disease. And that if we are living harmoniously, then we're going to express ourselves in the form of being well. And when I think of living harmoniously, I think of living in a sustainable way. I think the two go hand in hand together. Ayurveda speaks very eloquently about living harmoniously through the five senses, and that we have to take into our bodies through our sense of taste, our sense of smell, our sense of sight, our sense of hearing, and our sense of touch, those impressions that are going to bring about normal, healthy physiology within our bodies, those that meet our individual needs that are articulated through the understanding of our prakriti and our vikriti, through our constitution and our current state of the three doshas within our bodies. And so if we want to sustain our own bodies, first of all, we could talk about sustainability just in terms of sustaining our lives. Ayurveda is the science of sustaining our own lives so that we can live the full lifespan that we are granted at birth, and so, or at conception. So I think that Ayurveda truly is a science of sustainability. Now, in order to reach our full span of our lives, we have to realize that we are connected to our environment, not, individually. And we need the opportunity to take in healthy impressions through our five senses. And if we live in a toxic world, then it's very difficult to not take in toxins through our five senses. And of course, there's the toxins from the pesticides that we eat, all the way through to the toxins we may take in through our eyes, the violence that we see on the television and in the media, the violence that we hear through the music and the lyrics of music sometimes, and it goes on and on. When I think about sustainability, I think about creating a world where we are very much like a plant. And a plant, if it receives everything that it needs, going to have a deep, rich color and lots of blossoms. It's got to have the right water, and it's going to have the right sunshine and temperature and nutrients. If it gets everything it needs, it's beautiful. Likewise, if we get everything we need through our five senses, then we're going to have a deep, rich color, and we're going to fully blossom as human beings. And this is what I think the gift of Ayurveda is, and the gift of sustainability is. And, another way in Ayurveda we talk about sustainability is through the understanding of ojas. Ojas is what allows us to sustain our lives. It allows us to be able to withstand the stresses of life. And so an Ayurvedic lifestyle and an Ayurvedic diet and living harmoniously builds up our ojas, builds up our stamina, builds up our strength, so that we are best able to exist in this world in a healthy and a prosperous way. And that, to me, is very important. And I think sustainability has so many levels that we need to explore as a community, and it's a global community. I believe that Ayurveda can add tremendously to that discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Mark. I would also like to understand, specifically because of your background as a practitioner of chiropractic medicine, and like you said, you've also studied, other systems when you were gaining exposure to complementary systems of medicine. What, according to you, really makes Ayurveda unique?
Oh, what makes Ayurveda unique to me is there's so much. I mean, I wouldn't know where to begin, because it is such a profound and unique medicine. I think perhaps we could say the first thing is that the approach to health is unique for each individual. I like to say that nothing is right for everyone. Everything is right for someone. Ayurveda is a path of understanding what is right for you. And so if you can come to understand yourself, and Ayurveda is a beautiful methodology for understanding who you are as a unique individual, then you can come to understand what you need to take in through your five senses in order to thrive, what you need to take in through your diet to thrive, but not just your diet. What kind of music, what kind of sights, what kind of smells, what kind of touch will really support you to thrive. It's such a unique, individualized form of medicine. And I think that really, truly is what makes it so unique. I also think that what makes it unique is the beautiful integration of understanding of body, mind, and consciousness. I think it is truly the most holistic form of medicine. When we think of holistic medicine, sometimes people use the word natural. Natural doesn't necessarily mean holistic. You can be on a natural foods program, but that's not holistic. It's only holistic if it includes an understanding of how everything you do impacts body, mind, and consciousness. And that when you're working on your healing, you're addressing body, mind, and consciousness. So even a food, if you understand it properly, you'll come to understand that it does impact your body, but it also impacts your mind, and it also impacts your consciousness. And so the knowledge of Ayurveda integrates this beautifully. Nothing is separated. We are so used to here in the West having doctors of the body, doctors of the mind, and then maybe clergy to help us, or spiritual teachers to help us with consciousness or spirit. But Ayurveda doesn't inherently separate these things. It understands that you can't affect the body without also impacting the mind and consciousness. You can't impact consciousness without it also affecting the mind and the body. And of course, if you affect the mind, you affect consciousness and you affect the body. With that interwoven integration, I believe that Ayurveda is truly unique. I think it's the most articulate system of healing body, mind, and consciousness.
Thank you, Dr. Mark. That is such a beautiful description of Ayurveda. I think you've really, in like a few words, encapsulated what really is, the soul of Ayurveda. Dr. Mark, the other thing which strikes me, particularly when I'm speaking to you, is that you're based in California. And for a lot of the people, in other parts of the world, when you think about California, you first, associate it with the Silicon Valley and technology, and developments in that area, for example, artificial intelligence. And here you have Ayurveda, which is really an ancient science, like some people say it's more than 5,000 years old. So what would you say to the youth, or the so-called millennials, Gen Next? Why should they really care about Ayurveda?
Well, I think Ayurveda is so important for them. And I'm reminded of a story just from a couple of years ago. I went to a big park in our community, and it was for a festival. And we were setting up the festival. It was a music festival. And so I'm walking around the beautiful fairgrounds among the trees, and there's kids running around, and there's adults setting up tents, and everybody's getting ready for the festival. And I was just walking through there, and I was being introduced to different people, different musicians, and meeting them, and just different people doing things. And people always say, so, who are you? What do you do? And I introduced myself, and I mentioned Ayurveda, and some people light up a little bit. And I remember over the course of about an hour, soon what happened was really, really interesting. I went to go sit down in the grass, and about 20 teenagers, boys and girls, started drifting over to where I was sitting. And we began to talk, and they began to ask questions, and they wanted to know about their constitution, and they wanted to know what foods to eat, and they wanted to know how to be healthy. And they were so interested in Ayurveda. I think that in our youth, that we find a tremendous receptivity and openness. I think they want to thrive. They just need the guidance to be able to thrive. And I think that Ayurveda provides them with that guidance. Whenever I speak to young audiences, they are so excited and enthusiastic. I think they are more enthusiastic than the older audiences. The older audiences are like, well, maybe you're asking me to make changes in my life. I'm not sure if I can do that. The young audiences, they are so interested. They're ready to make changes in their lives. They are not limited in their thinking. And they understand too that the world belongs to them, that they are the ones that are going to grow up in the world, that they're going to have another 60 or 70 years in this world. And they want this world to be a a harmonious and healthy place for them to live. And so they're highly motivated. They want to heal climate change. They want to fix the problems that the earlier generations were not able to. Ayurvedic medicine, I believe, provides a roadmap, not only to heal the human being, but to heal our planet. And I think that we can take the knowledge of Ayurveda from the microcosm of the human being into the macrocosm of the planet. And that when we do that, we can truly bring healing throughout all of society. It just takes imagination, and the youth today has a great imagination, and they are ready and they are capable. I believe in them, and I believe that they can take this knowledge to the next level. I see the day when Ayurvedic medicine here in the West and all over the world, I see the day when it's simply the default way of being, that it is the way that people are going to live their lives. Why? Because it makes perfect sense. And it's because it speaks to the heart, and because it speaks to the truth that we all know. If we do not live harmoniously, we cannot thrive as human beings. And we know that. And Ayurveda is the only science that teaches us how to do that.
Wonderful. Dr. Mark, so we've spoken about the future, where one would hope that everybody can really adopt an Ayurvedic way of living. But speaking more in the short term, if we think about the next 5 to 10 years, this really is a very important decade that is ahead of us, particularly the year that we've entered it in. What is your vision for the future of Ayurveda for this coming decade?
Well, I'm mostly involved right now in the development of Ayurvedic education and training practitioners. So when I think of the next 5 or 10 years, where my mind wanders toward is the development of education here in the United States, expanding our programs, improving our educational programs here in the United States, so that we have the best possible practitioners that are going out into every community. I envision the day 10 years from now where every community in the United States will have an Ayurvedic doctor, or 10 in that community for people to choose from. Now, we have many communities that are like that already, but we don't have enough communities that are like that. We have the most practitioners probably in California, more than anywhere else in the United States. We have a couple of other places in the United States where we also see quite a few practitioners, but probably nowhere more than here in California. And so I would like to see a practitioner in every city and every community. And that's what I'm working toward. And I do see that happening. I see, every year we're graduating more and more people to go out into the world. And each time we graduate somebody at our school, they take care of so many more people. And so as we graduate 1,000 Ayurvedic doctors, they're going to be taking care of 1 million patients. And when we graduate 10,000 Ayurvedic doctors, they're going to be taking care of 10 million patients. And when we graduate 100,000 Ayurvedic doctors, they're going to be taking care of 100 million patients. And so this is what I see. And this is how education occurs. It happens one community at a time, from Ayurvedic practitioners who see it as their job to spread the knowledge, to share the light of Ayurveda in their community. Each practitioner must become that light in their community, the source of knowledge for how to live harmoniously, and teach their communities about well-being. This is how I see the next 5 to 10 years, and I see it growing rapidly right now. Right now it's growing rapidly, and I see it continuing to do so. It's growing exponentially every year.
Wonderful. Dr. Mark, we'll ask some really quick questions. So do a rapid fire round and, hear more from you on Ayurveda. How would you describe Ayurveda in one word?
Harmony.
How would you describe India in one word?
Mother.
What is the one Ayurveda practice that you think absolutely everybody should follow?
Abhyanga.
Uh, one Ayurvedic principle that you live by.
Harmony. It's just so many to choose from. I'll say another one, love.
Okay. What is your favorite place for experiencing authentic Ayurveda?
Right here with my feet on the ground on the earth. Authentic Ayurveda, I believe there is one place, and that is the earth, and it is everywhere.
Dr. Mark, you also know about Ayurveda Day celebrations this year, which are being steered around over 70 countries, worldwide. And we would really love for you to give a message for Ayurveda Day, and how we can use that initiative to grow the impact of Ayurveda around the world.
My message is this: that harmony is the source of well-being. Harmony is the path to love. Harmony is the path to health. Health, love, well-being, they're all interrelated with each other. My message to really the global community is to realize that we are all interconnected together, and that Ayurveda are the threads. It provides the threads that connect us together and our well-being together. And as we go forward, all of us who are practicing Ayurveda, all of us who are teaching Ayurveda, all of us in all the countries who are working so hard to bring Ayurveda to their communities, let all of us too remember that we are integrated together. And that's why I appreciate all the work that you're doing, Ritika, and the work of your organization, because you're not only promoting Ayurveda, you're bringing us all together all over the world. Where there's harmony, there's health. And so Ayurveda is healthy when we all come together in harmony.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mark. It was an absolute pleasure speaking to you today. I appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to having you for Ayurveda Day celebration on 13th November this year. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you, Ritika. Namaste.